Okay, I'm going to conduct this interview and we're going to go over some of the things that, naming where the place that we're interviewing, and that's Normanwood Library here at ASUMH of Mountain Home. This is March 15th of '06. This is Mrs. Rebecca Baker, and your date of birth is February 18th, 1929. The names of the people attending this interview are Mr. and Mrs. Baker, uh, Jean Smith. Sarah, your last name is Strobel. Okay. And the organization we're working with is the Friend Culture Honors Program from ASUMH. And we're going to start out asking you about what war and branch of service that you served in.
I was in the Navy Nurse Corps, and it was from 1952 to 1958, and that was the Korean War.
And what was your rank?
I started out came in as an ensign and got up to a lieutenant. Back in those days, the Navy Nurse Corps had one captain. That's all.
As a senior officer.
As a senior officer, one Navy captain, Navy nurse captain. Today it's quite different. We even have admirals now, but back in our day, there was one. In fact, what was sad was many of the nurses who had been in during the 40s, they remained lieutenants for 14 and 15 years. Now, of course, they went up in pay grades. You know, they got more money. Well, if you can imagine, I made $213 a month.
Wow.
As an ensign.
So what you're telling me, there's a lot more opportunities for
Oh,
women.
many, many better opportunities today. It's wonderful today.
And you served on a hospital ship. What was the name of that hospital ship?
It was a USS Consolation.
Consolation.
After it was retired, it became the Hope, USS Hope, and went around the world as the Hope. And then, unfortunately, it was scrap lumber, or scrap metal. There's lumber on it too, but scrap. That hurt.
Where were you when you enlisted?
I was not enlisted. I was commissioned.
You were commissioned.
Yes, and back in those days, back in 1952, I had graduated from nurses training in 1951, and I put my papers in right then. But what you had to do was wait until you could not go in those days unless you were an RN. Today it's a little different. They have a little different programs where you can kind of go in and get degrees. But back in those days, you had to be an RN. And I put my papers in as soon as I graduated. Of course, then I had to wait to take state board and what have you to see if I was going to pass, which I did. And then I had to wait. The FBI came and checked for 6 months back in those days. They checked on you. And I did not find this out till years later. My neighbors, their voices were sealed, and they told me, they said, "Oh, the nicest little man came and started asking questions about you." And I said, "What for?" And they said, "Oh, it was the FBI." I said, "I was scared to death to talk to them," but we did. But see what your job is in the medical field is you have presidents to take care of, you have congressmen, you have this, that, and the other, and you have to be able to have secret clearance. And so that's why.
That's very interesting. Why did you join or become commissioned? What drove you to
That was not my plan when I entered this earth. My plan was to be an airline stewardess. I wanted to fly like anything. But back in those days, you had to be an RN. No one knows that today. They have flight attendants today, which, whatever. But back in those days, you had to be an RN. So that was my plan. I was going to go through nurses training, and then I was going to fly, because I've always wanted to fly. But what happened? Got too tall. The airplanes were too low for me. So I said, well, the heck with this, and I joined the Navy.
Do you really have any regrets?
Oh, are you kidding? One husband and 6 kids later? No regrets.
Oh, wow.
Mm-mm.
And why did you pick the service branch, the U.S. Navy?
Because Cairo, Illinois is right there at the confluence of the Ohio and the Mississippi, and I was on water all the time and in water, swimming and whatever, you know. So no, it had to be the Navy. Had to be the Navy.
What were your first days in service like?
It was literally a boot camp. There were 16 of us in my class, and we had a Marine, and all he could tell us was that we had left feet. None of us knew how to march. He tried, God love him, he tried and tried and tried, but he let us pass. It was rough, but after that it was okay. No
How did
problem.
you feel in the beginning? Did you have confidence that you were going to
Oh,
get?
oh yeah, you learn that you live as a nurse. You learn life from the first day you're in nurses training till you grow up. What's sad is many times your high school friends, you go beyond them because they don't understand that you're living life and death every day, taking care of patients, and they don't understand that. They have more fun things on their mind and what have you. So
Wow, that's interesting. Did you have a lot of disconnect when you came home and communicating with your
uh,
friends?
when I came home, what I would do is be with family. As I said, I outgrew my friends. Made new friends, of course, in the Navy.
But you overcame your boot camp experience, and do you remember your instructors? Anyone specifically that stands out?
Yeah, Miss Seidel. God love her. She had been a Navy nurse for years and years and years and years, and she had a Navy experience too, in that her brother was a chief, and so we kind of bonded there, even though she was my boss. But I had a brother. Both my brothers had been in the Navy during the war. In fact, one brother retired finally after 20 some years in the Navy. He retired, and then the other brother, when he got out in 1948, he had not been able to finish school, so he came back and finished school.
So it sounds like you adapted to it a little better than some of the other nurses. Where exactly did you go on the hospital ship?
Let's see. Well, the best place, well, Korea. We went into the harbor of Korea. And if you can imagine, Korea is the coldest place in this world. If you could imagine a Liberty boat, now we have to park out there because you can't, the shallow water. We had to take a Liberty boat in, and here it is cold. I mean, it is cold. And what you had to do was the fellas on the boat had to cut through the ice to bring us on shore. And we would be there maybe 3 or 4 hours, and that would, now this is salt water. This is not cold ice water. It's, so the other important thing was we had on the ship, we had a helicopter deck. And we got to, the captain asked us if we would like to, there were only 16 females on the ship. And he said, would you girls like to go up to the DMZ line? Now, in the news yesterday, they had that now the South Koreans can go through an area now through the DMZ line up to the north area. The DMZ line is on the 38th parallel. And up there, we would land and they said that the military wanted to see round eyes. And if you could have seen how we were dressed, I mean, we were dressed in anything warm that we could have gotten. We put on layers of clothes to go up there. And those guys, we went and had dinner with them, you know, and talked to them. They just wanted to touch, the guys did. But anyway, we looked over through that DMZ line. And you talk about something scary. That line was full of bouncing Betty mines. And bouncing Betty mines are those that are buried that will come up just high enough that when they explode to get around the knees and etc. But we could see the eyes of the North Koreans. It was scary.
I can imagine.
But what we would do is we would do physicals on the people who were there, or if they had to be operated on in Korea, had to be operated on or whatever, then we would fill up the ship and then we would take them to Japan and drop them off there. And if they had to have further surgery, they could have it there, or if it was bad enough, then they could be airey back to the States. So Yokosuka, the other exciting part was the time that we went into Hiroshima. We were the first ship to go into Hiroshima. This is 1954. And the captain on the ship told us, he said, "We are not well liked here in Hiroshima." You know, that's where the bombs go. He said, he said, "Now we're going into the town," and he said, "If anyone on the ship feels that they cannot behave, if they feel that they are going to cause an international incident, I want you to stay aboard the ship, and I'll give you liberty somewhere else." And needless to say, no one misbehaved, because it was such a solemn to see these people with these. They took us to the area where the bomb actually dropped, and to the houses. Of course, the houses were gone, but the concrete slab that was there, that had been a step into the house, had the burnt butt print on that step. They had size where they would do the wheat, and their handprints were on these sides, burned into the wood. Just things like that. And of course, the actual people in the hospital, and this was several years after the bomb had been dropped, seeing the people, exciting.
I was going to say that's probably a very memorable experience for you. You'll never forget that. Did you get to see any kind of combat or in the thick of things?
Sometimes on Saturday nights when the little patients came back from Liberty, had to take care of them sometimes.
Were there casualties at all in your unit?
Oh, that's what we took care of, casualties.
As far as
On
any
the
of the nurses, your fellow nurses?
And no, the nurses were
But I
okay.
can imagine you saw a lot of casualties. What are a couple of your most memorable experiences?
Seeing the children born. Really, there's not just one thing. It's been since 1952 to now, and there's not really one thing that I can't think of one thing.
It's all been good.
And were you awarded medals, and would you like to tell us about some of the medals that you were awarded?
Really, no, the only one.
National Service Medal.
National Service Medal, and then our ship was the Korean. We were allowed the Korean medal. But other than that, see, I'd really. That's it.
Did you put those down?
No, I did not.
As far as the highest rank, you were lieutenant, is that correct?
That's the same as the captain in the other services.
Okay.
Same as the captain.
How many people were under you that you under your control?
Oh gosh.
How many people on the board?
Oh gosh. Sometimes 150. I don't know. It varied. And then when I worked dependents, that'd be different. So yeah.
How did you stay in touch with your family in Illinois?
Letters, airmail letters, and you tried to call, but back in those days, telephone calls, you would speak, and then you'd have to wait for it to go through, and then they would call back, answer back. It was kind of expensive and frustrating, to say the least.
I know you've watched the show MASH.
Oh yeah.
Is it anything like that?
The only thing about it, of course, we didn't have the alcohol that like they're in the thing and whatever, but um, what you tried to do, and you had to do, was try to make light when you could, because you were, as I said, like many times they were in MASH, they were operating and what have you, and they all of a sudden somebody would come up with a joke or this, that, and the other, and you have to do that. Even doctors in civilian life, right? People can't understand why they sometimes tell jokes and what have you, but it's so tight at that time that you've got to have something to get you a little bit relaxed, or else you make mistakes.
That's talking about seasickness.
Huh?
Seasickness.
Oh, seasickness.
Yeah, your friend.
Oh, on the ship we had one nurse, God love her. Still, she's still around. But what happened was, anytime the anchor came up, she went down. She was seasick from the time the anchor was up, and I'd have to take over her duties, and I also took over her food. You were asking about the food. On the ship, officers had to pay for their own food, You, yeah, you had to pay for your own food. So what they would do is not hire, but have a person to plan the menus for the entire month. And of course, we had good food, steaks and whatever the first of the month, but toward the end of the month, it got kind of whatever. And so finally, they got a dietitian sent aboard ship, and of course, she knew what to do. She made our money go farther. But what we used to do on Guam is that a ship with lettuce and fresh vegetables and what have you would come every 2 to 3 weeks, and you would line up to get a head of lettuce because you wanted fresh. Now bananas, you got bananas. They were all kind of bananas.
Did you feel a lot of pressure or stress?
It just at times. No, just at times.
The experience in Japan.
Which one?
Hospital.
Nah.
The buying and the opportunities of buying stuff in Japan.
Back in those days, we did have good buying opportunities in Japan. Of course, it's changed now. Our son has been over there visiting. In fact, he was stationed at Iwakuni for a while. And things are pricing. We had 360 yen to $1 back in those days. And now, she's saying, wow, yeah. Back then, the first time we went out, Hong Kong. We went into Hong Kong, our ship did. And we tried to fool them there. We'd say we wanted to get a coat made or a suit made or something made or whatever. And the people would say, well, when you ship leave, and we say, oh, it's leaving tomorrow, because we wanted to get it done quickly. And they knew when we were going to leave. We didn't know, but they always knew exactly when we leave. And one of the doctors on the ship, his wife had sent him a shoe, and she told him she wanted it just like that. So he took it to the shoe person, and they made this shoe, and he got it back, and he opened up the box and looked, and on the bottom, it had a hole in it. And he took it back to him. He said, why did you make a hole? He said, you told me you wanted it just like that other one.
What did most of you do to entertain yourselves?
Depended where we were. Of course, back there, we had record players, and that's about it, and radios, they didn't work. And then on the ship, what they would do is the crew and everybody would put on skits, and they were always fun. In Japan, you shopped. You went to Yokosuka. You went all over the place, or you went to Tokyo, or you went to wherever to shop. And the Japanese were wonderful. I have walked the streets in Tokyo at midnight. It felt just, part of it was because I was so tall, and back then the people were a lot shorter. Their diets have changed now, and we have a different people there now. They're a lot taller and a lot healthier. But back then, when I walked the streets, I was tall, and thought I was strong, which I was because I took a little judo. So,
Did you get to see any famous entertainers like Bob Hope or any of
oh
the?
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I used to accompany.
Oh, you did Shirley Temple too?
Yeah, right.
You did Shirley Temple too. And speaking of memorable things, was Billy Graham came to Tokyo, and he filled that place up. That place, that auditorium, I don't know, had thousands that were there. Yeah.
That's terrific. When you were in the service, you talked about Guam and Japan. Did you get to travel many places beyond that?
I really didn't want, well, Hong Kong, of course, but no, I really didn't want to. I kind of wish I'd gotten down to Australia, but didn't quite make that. No, when you're in love and he's there, you don't travel,
I see.
do you?
Oh,
Do you recall anything particularly humorous or an event that sticks out in your mind that you'd like to share?
Well, the one thing was about that shoe. I thought that was kind of humorous.
Mhm.
Yeah, nothing sticks out right.
Nothing sticks out.
I'd have to stop and think on that.
Did the nurses pull pranks with each other, or was it just too serious?
Some of the patients would try it. I mean, they thought they were going to try it, and if they thought they could get by with it, they would go a little farther. But all you had to do was let them know that you know it wasn't going to work.
Did you take a lot of photographs during that time?
Back in those days, you took slides.
Slides?
Yeah.
35 millimeter.
35 millimeter slides. Yeah. Now, our hospital ship, the Constellation, as I said, it's gone, the ship's gone and whatever. But the members of the crew from 1942 to 1957, I think it was, when it was destroyed. No, later than that because of the Hope. But anyway, we still have reunions every 2 years. And this next October, we will be having a reunion in Vegas.
What did you think of your fellow officers? Sounds like you were pretty much commanding at that time, but did you
No. We had a commander. I had a commander nurse over me.
Did you? Okay.
Mm-hmm. I was lowly. I was just a lieutenant.
Did you bond with her, or?
Oh, I bonded with everybody. In fact, I still hear from some of my nurse friends that were, yeah.
Did you keep a personal diary during that time?
Oh, no. No.
Okay. And do you recall the day that your service ended?
Actually, no, because see, by this time I had joined the Navy. There were 6 of us that had joined the Navy as regular Navy, and that was the last of the regular Navy nurses. And after that time, you had to come in as reserve. So then when I got out, I had to go reserve. And so I was already out and, pregnant and whatever, and they just sent me a paper.
Put married in there someplace.
Oh, married, excuse me.
Did you go back to work, or you just raised your family?
Both.
Both.
Both, yeah.
Were you able to get any of your education? Did you go on education through the GI Bill?
I wish. No, I would have. No, that was one of the things I wanted to do. I always said I was going to learn to fly, and I didn't get to learn to fly. Flew low with the kids.
You sounded like you made a lot of close friendships, and you meet every 2 years to.
For the Constellation, yeah. But now other people we meet and Christmas, stacks of cards. I have made this statement many, many times that the military is a sorority and/or fraternity that not everyone can get into. because you really bond with people. You friends forever.
You leave a military base, then you go to another military base, and you have friends that have already preceded you at that base. So they welcome you with open arms.
Wow.
So you're going home, then you go to a new military base.
And if there's a typhoon coming, or oh, that was a memorable experience too. That typhoon I was in. But anyway, uh, when there's a hurricane like Pensacola, the doctors, they go to the hospital. The families all get together and get the kids all together and what have you. Go to a place where we can all stay together and help one another. When you move, and of course people move all the time. What you do is you either help them move in or move out. You help. You're always there to help.
And it sounds like you're very active in organizations after you got out. What are some of the organizations you're involved in now?
Well, we just cut back on a few. I was with the Cancer Society. In fact, he and I started the first Relay for Life here back in '96. And this year will be the 10th year for that. And we're going to be whatever it is, co-chairman or whatever this year. With Carti, we've been with Carti. The historical
12 years.
12 years. With the Historical Society at church, whatever. People kind of hate to see me come in because they know I'm going to be asking for money for some project. You know, oh, here comes Becky. She needs more money for something.
And I'm going to ask you the same question that was asked of your husband. You have a unique perspective as being a mother and as a woman. What do you think about the war in Iraq today?
I just wish that I could go. And I am able to go. I mean, I wish, physically I'm ready to go. I would go to protect some of these young people, but we're doing, we should have stayed there a little longer in '91, and we didn't. People wanted everybody back here in a hurry and whatever, and I feel we goofed then. But no, we're going to stay there this time. Or else.
Or else.
They'll hear from me.
What would you like to add that we haven't talked about, or anything
You
at
were
all?
talking about something memorable. I remember the time we were out in the Typhoon, and here we are, this hospital ship bouncing, water coming. They had to put wet tablecloths on our tables to keep the dishes from sliding off. They had ropes. If you went outside, and of course we were told not to go outside, but some of the people had to go outside. That was their job. On the deck. And to do their jobs. And they put ropes on them because off they'd go. But that ship, I mean, this was a huge ship. It would go up and just come down on that water. And we were wondering about some of the other ships, and we found out that the other ships, they sent them somewhere else. And here we were coming up and down on that water. It was fun, though. We saw movies. Oh, that was one of the best thing was when the Liberty boat came from another ship and had mail. Oh, mail. And when our son and daughter were over she was on the hospital ship in the Persian Gulf, and when he was in Afghanistan and Iraq the two times, what I did was I sent them a mail every day. And because I remember, you didn't care if you got bills, it had your name on it, and they called your name, and oh, that was the most wonderful experience to get something in mail. And I encourage people to write and do whatever they can for our people over in Iraq and Afghanistan and Bosnia. They're over there too. In fact, they're in Korea too. But I want them to come home.
I know we asked your husband, but go ahead and tell us a little bit about your kids and what they've accomplished. And
Well, our oldest daughter is a teacher, and unfortunately she only taught for the years that the children were small. And then when they got up just a little higher, then she quit teaching and whatever. And
Full-time mama.
huh?
Full-time mama.
Yeah, she became really a full-time mama. She had two children, two boys, and she's in Seattle. And we have another son who was OB-GYN, and he has a daughter, and she gave us two great-grandsons.
And he's now dead.
Yeah, well, he died in October of '04. And then there's Betsy. She's was a teacher, and she's got two daughters now. That one is going to be a teacher, and the other one's going to be a dietitian. She's already graduated from college and taking further courses, getting her master's. And then we have Rob, who's a PhD chemical engineer, and he right now is up at Calgary, and he's working for Jacobs Engineering, which is a what's it called firm? Worldwide firm. And what he's doing there, his expertise in college on chemistry was to oil, and there's scads of oil up in Calgary. Tar sands it's called. An example of that is if you take the sand and put it in a cup and then pour hot water in it, the oil goes to the bottom. No, goes to the top. Goes to the top, the sand goes to the bottom. And his expertise is how to do that.
Yeah, he's the chief engineer on this project. And this phase of the project is $900 million.
So
the whole project that he's working on is $8 billion.
There is oil up there.
Lots of oil. As much oil as they have in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And then, of course, there's Bruce. He is at Oceanside. He's the anesthesiologist, a doctor. And he has been with, you say, well, what's a Navy doctor doing with the Marines? But the Marine Corps does not have a medical corps. The Navy takes care of them. That's why there's always Navy people with the Marines. And the Marines I don't worry about my son because the Marines take care of their docs. So I didn't worry about him. And then, of course, Brenda is at, she's that far from getting her doctorate in nursing, too. So we're proud of all of them.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add before we wind down?
No, I think I've rattled on enough. I think you'll be editing out a lot of this, but...
No, I don't think so. It has been my honor and pleasure to be here and interview you and to sit on and interview your husband. And I'd like to thank you on behalf of the Frank Holders Honor Society and ASUMH and the Veterans Project that we have here on campus. This has been a pleasure.
I wish you
could help further, let us know.
And Frank
Defense
Coulter.
Service Medal is one I was thinking of that had the Gold Star. I put it down, that's one of Becky's medals, Defense Service Medal. Besides the Korean medal.
Ready to close?
Still can't think of the other service medal, meritorious service medal, but there's another